It was never the gunshot that stayed with him. It was the silence that came after. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the old house on Hawthorne Street went quiet in a way that felt unnatural, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. The neighbors would later say they heard nothing. No scream, no crash, just a sudden absence of sound, like a radio turned off mid-sentence. By morning, the body was found in the study, seated upright in a leather chair, hands folded neatly in the lap. There was no sign of struggle, no broken glass, no forced entry, and no weapon anywhere in the room. Yet the man was unmistakably dead. His name was Walter H. Collins, 73 years old, retired history teacher, widower, a man who lived quietly, paid his bills early, waved politely at neighbors, and had no known enemies. That was what made the case unsettling. Because people like Walter Collins were not supposed to die like this. Detective Samuel Green stood in the doorway of the study longer than necessary, letting the room speak to him. He had learned over decades on the force that crime scenes told their stories slowly if you let them. Rush them, and they lied. Sit with them, and they confessed. The study smelled faintly of old books and pipe tobacco. Floor-to-ceiling shelves lined the walls, heavy with hardbound volumes. American history, Civil War diaries, local town records going back a century. On the desk sat a teacup, still half full, the surface of the tea unbroken. Green noticed that first. A man does not sip tea calmly if he knows he is about to die. The medical examiner would later confirm the cause of death as a single gunshot wound to the chest. Clean, precise, fired at close range, yet no powder burns, no residue, and again no gun. A professional shot. But why here? Why him? Green had worked murders involving money, jealousy, rage. This scene carried none of those fingerprints. It felt deliberate, personal yet strangely respectful. Whoever killed Walter Collins had not ransacked the house, not even disturbed the books. They had come for one reason only. And whatever that reason was, they had found it. As the day unfolded, the neighborhood slowly emerged from behind curtains and half-open doors. Hawthorne Street was the kind of place where people aged in their homes, where routines were sacred. Walter walked every evening at 6, fed the birds at dawn, bought the same loaf of bread. Every Tuesday. Green spoke to neighbors who described him as kind, reserved, and deeply private. He listened more than he talked, one woman said. He remembered everyone's birthday, said another. No trouble, ever, they all agreed. That word again, ever. By afternoon, Green had read through Walter's basic history. Born locally, married once. Wife passed 12 years earlier. No children, no criminal record, no recent disputes. It was a perfect life on paper, which made Green uneasy. Because perfect lives almost never were. Late that evening, Green returned to the house alone. He preferred working crime scenes at night, when distractions faded and details grew louder. He stood again in the study, eyes drifting across the shelves. That was when he noticed it. One book slightly out of line. Not pulled out dramatically, just enough to catch the eye of someone who had spent years noticing what did not belong. He reached for it. The book was titled The Forgotten Trial of 1929. Inside, the pages had been hollowed out, carefully, professionally, and inside the cavity lay a single envelope, yellowed with age, sealed but not marked. Green did not open it yet. He already felt the weight of it. Back at the station, he opened the envelope under a desk lamp. Inside were photographs, old ones, black and white, grainy, a courtroom, a group of men standing stiffly for the camera, and one young face that made Green stop breathing for a moment. It was Walter Collins. Not 73. About 20. standing beside 3 other men. One of them had a number pinned to his jacket. A defendant. The documents that followed told a story Walter Collins had never shared. In 1929, a young factory worker named Thomas Reed had been accused of killing his foreman. The evidence was thin, witnesses unreliable, yet the jury convicted him. He was sentenced to death. 4 men testified against him. 4 men whose testimony sealed his fate. One of them was Walter Collins. The case had been controversial. Years later, doubts emerged, missing evidence, conflicting timelines, but the conviction stood. Thomas Reed was executed. The truth buried with him. Until now. Green leaned back in his chair, feeling the slow, heavy turn of understanding. Walter Collins had not been a victim chosen at random. He had been the last remaining witness. The next days revealed more. The other 3 men from the trial had. All died over the past decade. One in a car accident, one of a sudden illness, one under circumstances ruled accidental, though quietly questioned. Walter was the final thread. Someone had been patient. Someone had been counting. Green traced Thomas Reed's family. There was only one surviving relative, a granddaughter, Evelyn Reed, age 46, lived 3 states away, no criminal history, worked as a librarian. Green visited her on a rainy afternoon. She was calm, composed, almost too calm. "I knew this day would come," she said softly after he explained why he was there. She told him her grandfather had written letters until the day he died, insisting on his innocence. Letters no one answered. Letters Walter Collins had received and never responded to. Evelyn had grown up hearing the story, watching her grandmother wait for justice that never came. "I didn't kill him," she said, meeting Green's eyes steadily. And Green believed her. The truth came later, in a way none of them expected. The envelope in Walter's study had not been hidden from others. It had been left to be found. A final confession. Walter Collins had lived with guilt for over 50 years. He had testified under pressure, afraid of losing his job, his standing, his future. A lie spoken once had followed him forever. In his final years, he had begun to collect evidence, hoping to correct the past. The person who killed him was not seeking revenge. They were finishing a story. The killer turned out to be an old man as well. Another witness. The only one who had tried to tell the truth in 1929, ignored and threatened into silence. He had watched innocent men die while liars lived long, peaceful lives. He waited until the last lie stood alone. Walter Collins had accepted his end calmly. The tea on his desk was proof. He had known why the man came, and he had not resisted. Justice had arrived late, but it had arrived. When Green closed the case file, he sat quietly for a long time. He had spent his career chasing justice through laws and procedures. This case reminded him that time had its own courtroom and guilt its own sentence. Some crimes sleep for decades, and some truths, no matter how buried, never stop breathing.